What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, An Officer and a Bigfoot, where I am documenting every part of my transition from being in the military active duty Air Force to going into the civilian world. Now today we're going to talk about resumes, because I just recently had a lot of stuff go on with the resume, a lot of lessons learned, and if this stuff is happening to me, I'm guessing there's at least one of you out there that probably may be in a similar situation. So hopefully this information helps you. If you've had a similar experience, please leave a comment and let me know, and I can learn from you and we can learn from each other. Now, that being said, I mentioned before on this channel, every time something significant happens on my timeline on my way to my 1 July 2022 retirement date, I would make a video about it. So I was probably a little bit late to need on getting my resume done. I had already several months ago started approaching different companies and having different individuals talk with me, and the first thing that they always want to say when you're networking is, hey, float me a copy of your resume, or hey, find me on LinkedIn, let's hook up there. And gosh, my LinkedIn profile probably hadn't been updated for like the last 3 jobs that I've had. And I don't know about you, but I've never really had a resume while I was in the military, because I didn't care about it. I didn't need one. The Air Force always told me, where to go, when to go, and what to do. Big tip number 1, no matter how long you've been in the military, how far away you are from possibly getting out, even if you're thinking about just separating after a couple of years, make sure you're documenting your achievements and your milestones, the things that you've accomplished in your field as you go along. It's something that I've heard a bit, but it's just kind of hard to make that kind of thing a priority when we have a lot of other things to do. So I got some advice from a friend that maybe I should consider having a resume, hiring someone to write a resume for me. And I started doing a little bit of research on that, and part of the networking that I've been doing lately, been talking to a lot of hiring authorities from different companies. A lot of them talk about this thing called ATS that they use, Applicant Tracking System. And what that is basically this one individual, I really appreciate him being very candid, but he said, every position that we put out there, we get hundreds, if not 1,000 or more job applicants. He's like, you think some recruiter is gonna read every single one of those resumes? Absolutely not. So they got this ATS software that basically weeds out the resumes down to what they think they're looking for, and it's using keywords, I guess, primarily, but possibly being formatted a certain way. So especially when I heard about that, I really thought it would be a good idea to just hire somebody. Now, I did a little bit of research. I ended up going with the company called Top Resume, and there were really good reviews. There was language on their website about how they specialize in military to civilian transition, and translating military lingo into the words that everyone else uses in the civilian world for a resume. So I ended up going with those guys. Another reason to consider possibly hiring someone to write your resume is that federal resumes, from what I understand, have to be done a certain way, written a certain way, again with certain keywords being used. Not that you can't maybe figure out on your own what some of that is, but it just seemed like a really good deal. Now, here's where I messed up. I had an expectation based on what I read and what I understood that I was going to take 19 years of time in the Air Force. We get an annual type of performance review every year in the Air Force. It's an OPR or EPR, all your awards and decorations. And I was going to hand all that to somebody, and they were going to look at it and pull out what was worthy of being on a resume, what they thought would be the most relevant to working in the civilian world. So that's really what I thought that I was going to be paying for. I should say another thing a lot of these companies do, and something that I also wanted them to do for me, was to touch up my LinkedIn profile, because I'm learning that's just so important. I think I said it on my last video that a statistic that they gave during the Transition Assistance Program, TAP training that all military have to go through before they get out, said that 60% of all hiring actions come through networking and whatnot, not from someone actually applying for a job on some list. So I can't overemphasize enough how important networking and having your LinkedIn right and your resume right. So that being said, I don't recommend paying somebody to write your resume. It was not a pleasant experience for me, and I'm going to take the responsibility for that, just not having vetted my expectations properly before I ended up hiring somebody. And the first red flag was really, you fill out this questionnaire and they only allow you to upload 4 documents along with the questionnaire. And I'm thinking, I got a 19-year career of information here that I need to dump on you so you can comb through it and figure out what's good and what's not. So that was probably the first sign that something was going to be a little off here. And then they finally assigned me to somebody, but I thought that they were going to assign me to, maybe somebody that had formerly served in the military and truly specialized in some sort of translating military language to civilian language, but that wasn't the case at all. The individual that I was assigned to, was a nice person and very responsive, although I would say a lot of the responses did seem a little bit robotic and kind of like canned email responses where just a few of the words were changed. I actually called the individual out on it at one point, and they insisted they were a real person, and I believed them, but it just didn't seem like a very personable type of experience. So I ended up sending these folks my last 3 performance reports, and also I made an outline of my career history, essentially the bases I had been assigned to, the jobs that I had, and really what my job description was there, with the intent that they were going to go through and look at the achievements that I had while I was at those jobs and tweak those and put those on. So 2 or 3 days go by and I get a message from the writer saying that my first draft is done. And I'm thinking, well, wow, that was super quick. He must have been working on this night and day for the last 2 or 3 days, because that's how long it would have taken me to do a good resume. And so I look at this thing and it looks beautiful. It's in a great format. It has an executive kind of opening paragraph that I thought really kind of tied together all my achievements and everything that I could bring to the table. But then the really disappointing part was I looked at the career experience section, which is the meat of the resume, and it was really just a regurgitation of the draft timeline that I had sent the individual. And they hadn't really, they changed, a few words. They changed led to directed and, a few things like that, which I consider, changing happy to glad. But, it was still just my job descriptions. But then they had the audacity to, in the email, talk about how they specialize in, highlighting your achievements and not just job descriptions. And I'm thinking, hey, dude, that's what you just did. So you do get an opportunity to provide feedback on the first draft, and I think they'll let you go back and forth twice with the writer. And I pointed out everything that I just told you, and it basically came back and said that, hey, I'm sorry that you are disappointed. We're going to work together and get this right, and we're going to ensure that you're totally happy with this experience. And but then he said, can you, give me examples of what you're not happy with? And I'm thinking, I just listed out 3 or 4 things that I had concerns with. So I think that's the point where I asked the guy if he was a robot, because I was getting super frustrated. So we went back and forth a few times. There was still a lot of military jargon in there that I thought he would translate, but long story short, I just ended up, saying the heck with it and just accepted it. They did do a cover letter as well, which is, what you would attach to your resume when you're going to send it to a company. And then they sent me a document which basically just told me how to literally cut and paste the items in my resume into my LinkedIn profile, which, was also kind of disappointing. I guess I thought there were some more secrets or trickery there to be had. So bottom line, I have a resume now. I ended up taking the last several days off of work to go back through and make some updates and make it more focused on the achievements and not the job descriptions, so that the people reading it are, seeing what I'm, more capable of doing. Long story short, again, the bottom line is I would not recommend that you hire somebody to write your resume. If you've done that kind of thing and you had a great experience, leave a comment and let me know. But it just seems like, I could have done what I have now in a couple of days if I just took the time to focus and do it to begin with. And I sure as heck could have done what he did with my, or what he recommended that I do with my LinkedIn profile. That's just plugging in the stuff from your resume. So nothing really cosmic there. I can't believe I paid money for that. It just seemed like this is such an important transition in my life that it was worth spending the little bit of extra money to do this. So don't pay money, but you do need to have a resume. I'm 13 months out from my retirement date, and I would have liked to have had my resume a few months ago when I first started interacting with companies. So if you're a year and a half or less, you're starting to get behind the power curve from needing to have your resume done and your LinkedIn done. Now, I will say a lot of military don't know this, but you can get a year of LinkedIn Premium for free. You just have to go to, I think it's linkedin.com/military. I'll put the link in the description below. But go ahead and do that. You might want to wait until you're about a year out to leverage the premium features in LinkedIn. It's nothing overly spectacular, but you can see who's viewing your profile, and it gives you a little bit of other information. It gives you the ability to correspond a little bit differently with folks. So it's definitely, it's free, so it's obviously worth it. So do that. Get your resume squared away, and get your LinkedIn squared away. So I'm curious what your experiences were. Did you just have a great experience? Am I just completely stupid and everybody else just worked on a resume all along their whole career, and I was the fool that waited till the end of 19 years to do it? Leave a comment below. Tell me how your experience went, and I'd love to hear your feedback and answer any questions that anybody has. And look forward to seeing you all again when we get to the next step of this journey. Take care.